my name is Abriana Garcia, and I'm a candidate member of the Party for Socialism and Liberation. I'm 21 years old, and I'm currently in my last year of my undergrad to get a Bachelor's of Music Education at New Mexico State University. I play the clarinet in my university's wind symphony and in the Philharmonic Orchestra, and I also play the baritone saxophone in my university's top jazz band. I have volunteered a lot of my time at various schools within my community to help young musicians, and I'm also currently working as a marching and instrumental technician at a high school. I was born in Alamogordo, New Mexico, a really small town that's located 10 miles away from Holloman Air Force Base, a highly active Air Force base. Due to the proximity of the base to the town, there's a lot of military support within the community and many conservative ideals. The two communities interact heavily with each other. Due to the limited amenities on the base, Alamogordo's economy receives a high level of support from the military community. Holloman even employs Alamogordo civilians to work in education, retail, secretarial, and other areas on the base. Alamogordo also is actively engaged with activities on the base. Recently, on June 29th, a ground-based military exercise was conducted within the city limits. This was the second test, the first being held in May of 2017, that tested and experimented with the Sierra Nevada Embraer A29 Super Tucano and Textron Aviation AT-6B Wolverine to evaluate their capability as combat weapon systems on a combat platform. So, before I was born, my dad, he decided to join the military as it was pushed to be a promising job perspective for people straight out of high school in Alamogordo. I ended up spending a large portion of my formative childhood years growing up on a military base and going to school there. Living on a military base with your family grants each family unit with basic living conditions. You get a house, utilities, grocery budgets, medical insurance, protected communities, and more. In 2008, when I was 10, my dad received a medical discharge, but only at a 50% disability with PTSD. Because he was not given a full discharge, he wasn't entitled to any benefits whatsoever, including medical. My family and I were required to move off of Holloman and move into Alamogordo. When this happened, we began facing many financial hardships and had trouble with living conditions for several years. A lack of decent medical insurance was a huge struggle in my family. My mom has numerous health conditions that require expensive medicines to maintain. I was also born with severe hearing loss in both ears, which has required me to wear hearing aids ever since the disability was diagnosed. Due to the nature of my hearing loss, I also have to get annual checkups to make sure that I'm taking preventative measures to save whatever hearing I do have left over. My parents, they eventually went their separate ways in 2010, which is when I was 13. At this point, my mom struggled with finding a job that paid a livable wage, and we began having to move in with my grandma, where we still struggled to make ends meet. We could barely even afford to buy groceries at the dollar store. To this day, my mom, she's still struggling financially. My dad, on the other hand, he was able to get a job with the UPS. He started off by loading trucks every morning, then substituting as a driver, and eventually getting his own route. In the beginning of 2014, he began receiving a dental treatment paid for by UPS. He had several tiny cracks in all of his teeth that were caused by a deployment in Iraq where his squadron was attacked. This required treatment was to remove all of his teeth and get dentures. But because of his PTSD, my dad also suffers severe flashbacks. Occasionally he would have an episode at work, and this led his boss to start accusing him of being a drug user. Around February of 2016, my dad began to have more and more flashbacks at work and suffer more episodes at work. His boss on May 4th of 2016 decided that he needed to be forced to go to the hospital and take a drug test. This drug test came back negative, but despite the negative result, he was still fired from UPS that same exact day. And he also was left with the full unfinished medical charges from the dental treatment and the medical charges for the test. He was still in the process of receiving his dental treatment, which is still uncompleted. And because he was only retired at a 50% disability, he wasn't able to pay anything with insurance. No medical support from the military whatsoever. It wasn't until a few months ago, so nearly 2 years later, that my dad has finally received 100% medical from the military. At a very young age, I experienced a huge change in my living conditions and saw the harsh realities that are present within a capitalist society. I became fully aware of the unfair and gross divide that is ever present between the working class and the ruling 1%. And also, when I was 13, I was required to participate in an academic contest for school called National History Day. It's an initiative to get kids to participate in history projects. Each year, there's a theme for students to relate a topic to. The theme for the contest that year was innovation in history, and I decided to make a website on communism in America because it's a controversial topic in a military town for sure. So, while I was struggling with my home life, I was also reading Marxist theory and becoming more aware of the problems that we face in society today. In some of my research for the project, I came across the PSL. Though I didn't take a definitive stand at 13 years old to join the party, I definitely began to pay attention more to the work that was being executed by members and saw how determined and how optimistic the party was to abolish the oppressive system that we currently have. It wasn't until this last year that I finally took the steps to join the PSL. I was always extremely hesitant to take any kind of definitive stand to speak out. I figured that since I'm a musician and a future educator, not somebody who's actively engaged in politics, that nobody would want to listen to what I had to say, that my voice wouldn't be relevant. But that's not true at all. Every single person has a voice that has something worthwhile to be shared. Every single person has something relative and useful to contribute to the party. Anyone who understands that the capitalist system is unfair, prejudiced, oppressive, and dehumanizing can join the party. I'm really glad that I was able to move past my own hesitations and join the PSL, and I hope that you all can take the steps to stand up and fight back.